So thank you so much. And the one thing I can say is that a lot of people have been waiting for this session to happen because I was told that, we are waiting for the AI session. And the other thing I noticed since this morning, while we've been discussing every aspect of education, AI has trickled into every conversation invariably. So one thing is for sure, this is the reality of today. And there are no two ways about AI and education not walking the same path, but what really are the challenges, what really could be the drawbacks, what do we have to navigate, we'll discuss on the finer points. So I want to start with my first question, and you can take it in that order. Sharmila, is AI a teaching aid, a co-teacher, or a disruptor of the traditional classroom?
So I think all three. It is a teaching aid because it is such a wonderful aid. I mean, there's so much possibility with AI. And in the classroom where a teacher is so, distraught with so much administrative stuff, it is so nice to bring all these changes into the classroom. Be it a presentation, be it an experiential learning class, or having a quick quiz, or just some exciting story. So it just brings in so much into the classroom that I think it's really a change maker in the classroom. And it is also, you said two other things.
Teaching aid, co-teacher, or a disruptor?
It is also a co-teacher because I would not, under any circumstances, sort of undermine the role of the teacher. The teacher is here to stay. She or he will always be there in the classroom, guiding the children, helping the children, supporting the children. AI will always be that teaching tool. And a disruptor also, disruptor in the positive way. It's how you look at AI. If it's changing the old classroom, yes, it's a disruptor because the classroom will look different now. The classroom will not always have the teacher up in front and the children sitting as passive receptors. So the teaching will be dual. I mean, the teachers and the children will learn together. So I think in that way, it is a disruptor. Disruptor in the negative sense also, because if the children are not applying themselves and just using AI to just generate homework, then that is also the sad part of. But I think that is just one of the flaws of AI. But if used sensibly with responsibility, I think there's a lot that we can do with AI in the classroom.
What do you think, Surabhi?
I would say that AI is a great teaching aid. And it has a lot of co-teaching potential, definitely. And as ma'am said, that it doesn't undermine the role of the teacher, but I think it has a potential to be a disruptor also when it is used without a purpose or a proper pedagogy. So that thoughtful mindset is required when we are enabling a classroom into an AI-enabled classroom. So I think a proper way of implementing this AI is very, very important as far as its purpose is concerned.
So just one point to add, I think given the context, the role of teacher becomes increasingly important, right? In the last session, as Manju ma'am narrated a beautiful story, the school is not only a temple of knowledge, it is also culture building, it is also socio-emotional. So I think the role of teacher, making sure that we sort of look at the possibilities around AI and make sure the children are not lost, becomes critical today.
Okay, so the other point, and as that has come up in the conversations since this morning, is that we are in the transitional phase, and the next 5 years are extremely critical, especially for first-generation learners. Can AI bridge language, learning, and accessibility gaps?
Of course. Most of us in this room today are privileged because our parents were educated. And so whenever we couldn't understand something in school, we reached out to our parents. In the other household, where the parents are not educated, it is very difficult for these children, especially when education sometimes is in a language which also is a foreign language, where English is not their language. They are not so confident about the language. If AI can replace that teacher and bring the teacher for the child, be there for the child, and look at teaching as, answering every question, like the question the gentleman asked, that my father says Om, but I don't know what Om means. So that is the kind of question a child should ask in a classroom, but will never have the confidence to ask. But he will ask an AI teacher, and he will get an answer for it. So I think it is a great teacher for a child who comes from a background which is different from many other children.
What is your opinion when it comes to tier 2, tier 3 cities? Also, when you mentioned the language divide or those students who are not well versed with English. Now, especially in certain states where we see that, there is a sort of resistance when it comes to NEP, or there is emphasis on the regional language. What about those students?
So I think technology like AI, a powerful technology like AI, if used effectively, can actually be a great equalizer. So to your question around tier 2 and tier 3, we can also build on the inclusive element of it, where we're talking about first generation learners, we're talking about lack of knowledge base, right? So I think if used effectively, it can really bridge that gap and be more inclusive.
Also, I would say that AI is a great platform for multidisciplinary and multilingual learning. If you see, the government has also made efforts with the Bhashini app. So sources like those, they bridge the gap of the language barrier which usually such first generation children they face. Also, I would say that such apps or AI cannot replace the human touch, the cultural differences which are there, the mental health issues, the economic, socio-economic background issues. So that is where a teacher has to work hand in hand with all such AI tools.
All right, so the other part for those who may be skeptical or may not know of what AI holds for us in the future, ask, are we raising a generation that may stop thinking and start prompting? Will over-reliance on AI weaken critical thinking, creativity, and originality?
It will weaken critical thinking if you are using AI irresponsibly. If you're just downloading and pasting and sending it out as your homework, it will reduce critical thinking. But if you use AI and if you use your whatever you've got from AI to build on your concept, to understand better, to create out of it, then I think it just develops thinking. It just makes you a better student. It makes you understand better. So it is very important to use every tool, whatever we have. If you use it correctly, you benefit from it. If you use it without thinking irresponsibly, you don't benefit from it. So I think AI is just one of those tools. And I think here the primary responsibility is also of the teacher to teach the child how to use it well. Like for example, if you have homework that is given with a clause of justification, justify this, rationalize this, elaborate on this, then AI will not be able to help you. You have to develop that yourself. So it's fine if you've got support from AI, but then has it broadened your knowledge? Has it made you sort of study beyond that? I think then the work is done.
No, but then this also brings me to the question, as is being said, that in many cases, students are ahead of teachers in understanding and adapting AI. So what do teachers do then?
So, of course, I would like to differ a bit here. I agree that over-reliance on any tool, it weakens thinking. So somewhere it is required that we teach our children to use AI just as a starting point and not a final answer. So it's just a prompt. And we have to teach our children to learn to use that prompt to their advantage, but only up to a limit. So we have to teach them to verify what outputs the AI platforms are giving. What are the questions that we have to ask? Whatever information and data we are getting from the AI. Now, also the beauty of generative AI platforms is they are highly trainable. So if I'm giving my prompts again and again, it recognizes my patterns. It recognizes my personality. So evaluate and justify, it might be able to do. So that is where the teacher's role comes in, to teach or sensitize the child in terms of how far this AI is helpful and where to stop and where to use the human mind, and where to do a collaborative learning. So I think physically also the classroom teaching learning strategies are highly relevant. AI tools are just a scaffolding there. It's not a replacement to it. So AI cannot replace the teachers. It cannot sideline them. That's what.
We'll talk about that point in greater detail, but I remember in one of the earlier conversations it was said that the student is saying that AI is saying this, and I'm sure this is the answer, and my teacher doesn't know. And the sense of resistance to say that, no, your teacher is right. You can't like blindly depend on AI. How do you deal with the students then, especially for the teachers?
So that's not only a teacher's problem. As a father of a teenage daughter, that's a problem of a parent as well. So the point is, let me just take a step back and look at I'm sure all of us agree that we're living in changing times, right? And it's a cliche, but it's true. But when you add technology, when you add AI to this, it becomes exponentially changing. Let me just take a quick example. A few decades ago, we used to describe the word as VUCA word, volatile, complex, ambiguous. Now there is a new framework for that, which is Bani. We're talking about brittle, we're talking about incomprehensible. So this will always be the scenario where the new age learners, the children growing up with these technologies will be ahead of parents as well as teachers, right? So the point is, as ma'am said earlier, how do you make sure that we don't resist that technology? We make sure that we enable the learners to use the technology in the right ways, and in a way, if I can use that word, regulate that a bit. I think that's the best way out. Like you have to, listen to your children in any other context. They will, as they're growing up, they will have their opinions on different things. They will have their opinion on AI. So I think we'll have to be patient listeners as well and make sure they sort of adopt it in the right way.
I want to talk about this in greater detail, especially for what it means for the parent, even in the form of their parenting. So I remember my mother would sit me down and make me memorize the tables, or give me that time, or probably get me a good tutor who would at that time charge 1,000, 2,000 rupees an hour. Now, we know that with AI teaching you, all of that gets eliminated. But how does it change for the parent to now ensure that the child is dealing with AI in the right manner? And how does the parent monitor that?
I think here, it's about parental engagement. You cannot leave teaching and coaching to AI. You cannot say, Acha, you take this iPad and you learn about this. You have to be a part of that. At least for a student in school and till a child is about 17, 18. Because you want to see what the child is seeing, right? You want to monitor what the child is doing. So I think that is something you cannot take away from parenting. It's not that you can just now pass it on that acha AI. In earlier times, I remember when in the evenings, in many houses, the dining table used to become the study table. And the child used to study at the center, in the house, in the middle of the house, and with people walking around, parents helping them. And it was such a beautiful experience. Now this whole thing of a child studying alone in a room with the door closed is sometimes scary, particularly when you have a laptop or an iPad where the child, you don't know what the child is surfing. So I think parenting also needs to be responsible and responsive.
And, there have been cases where one of the cases that said that the mother claimed that AI chatbots encourage their sons to kill themselves. Now, there have been several such cases that have been reported in the news. Parents have been wanting safeguards on AI. So it is extremely concerning for the parents to sometimes the personal chats that AI has with the child and where that goes.
True. So AI is a high potential and a high risk engagement. So where that potential stops and the risk starts, as a parent, I think it's very difficult to understand. And of course, there are ways to monitor what apps, what platforms our child is actually engaging in. And that is where we can have all the cybersecurity that we need to have. But again, in today's time, with the advent of online classes and online platforms, it has become a necessity to give the devices and the internet connections to the children. So I think a proper policy is required, or maybe, I don't know if there's a parenting policy on this. It's a very difficult area to navigate. So really not sure how we should navigate that in the capacity of parent, because nowadays all the parents are mostly working, whether they are working from home or not working from home, but they are engaged in their own devices. So somewhere the children are left to fend for themselves. So what do we do about it? It's like the new society which is emerging. And how do I make that choice of not working and being all the time engaged with the child? So there are careers which mothers and fathers have to look after. Times are expensive. So not really sure how. I think this is a point where we should have a lot more dedicated discussion.
One of the speakers in the earlier session said that while we need to get the child AI ready, but we also need to get the parents AI ready, and probably have those collaborative sessions to help teach the parent how to navigate AI with the child. Do you think that's more important than ever?
That's more important than ever. So if we sort of zoom out and talk about a macro level, there is a need for a wider policy at school level and beyond. And when we also talk about always learning, when we also talk about learning at every age, I think this is a skill that parents would need to either unlearn and relearn. That's really, really important. And if I sort of zoom in and say the things at a micro level in a lighter vein, I think it's important for us to be able to give them time.
Very true. It finally circles back to that. Again, what is the most worrisome concern? Is it data privacy, misinformation, over-dependence? Of course, we've discussed. But what about ensuring that the right data goes, because children are impressionable, they're too young, they don't know what all they're sharing and where they should stop?
I think all three are worrisome. And that is where the role of the parent and the teacher comes in, that both parent and teacher have to be engaged with what the child is doing. And I think that is crucial. If you know what your child is doing, the sites the child is visiting, the information the child is accessing, these are very crucial to be able to understand even behavior patterns of the child. So many times we say that child behavior has changed because they've, like you said, that the AI platform encouraged the child to commit suicide. So these are things as parents, as teachers, as adults in the life of the child, we have to be, connected with.
In my opinion, as I said, it's very scary that these generative AI platforms are so trainable. They know us in and out. They know our choices. They know our personality very, very well. The more data we feed into it, the more trained they get into knowing us. But more than that, the privacy concerns, I feel that the biases it creates, because these trainings of the generative AI takes place through how much data a larger population is feeding into. So that it's an intelligent thing, AI, but it's not human. It cannot use its mind to understand what is right and what is wrong. So whatever is the data a larger population fills in, that is truth for the AI. So that is what it creates a bias. So there are ethical issues which are very, very important to be addressed very immediately. Has to be certain policy around it. There has to be a certain monitoring around how these platforms are trained. So for me, that is more important, because that is where the child gets impacted. Because for the child who's using that platform, that's the truth. But it's actually not the truth. That's not the true picture of the society or the data. So for me, that stands out.
If I can just add to that, so problem, I think all three, I agree with ma'am, that all three are real big problems, and it's scary in a way, right? And therefore, this is where human-centric AI comes into piece, right? So the point is, we have to, as educators, we have to be able to carefully pick up use cases. For example, one use case could be research, right? You know, many years back, a learner would go to a library, you know, search physical books. Now you can go to any AI tool and do it. But the important part is that the fact-checking, right, and applying one's critical thinking remains really important. So I think carefully handpick the use cases, and of course give it time, right? We don't have to rush it. Technology is changing so fast, so don't rush into the use cases. Give it time, test it, test the use cases with learners, teachers, parents, and I think then probably we'll be able to mitigate those challenges, but the challenges are really there.
And also it's a learning process for AI creators, for AI users, for everyone.
You know, Professor Kamal is sitting in front and I was watching your presentation and he made it look like so smooth, as if AI is the best thing to happen to any student, of how learning has been made so much easy, of how language is not a barrier, of how the student can just ask the questions and make it an experiential learning for himself the way he wants it, to how AI should do it for him. So again, I know it has a lot of benefits, but again, how we have to navigate through the drawbacks as well. To now understand the new roles that teachers will play in AI-enabled classrooms, you've spoken about how we need to monitor everything, teach them to how to use AI, but can AI replace teaching roles?
Never. I don't think AI can ever replace the teacher. It's, you know, like they would say earlier that, that a teacher is not a sage on the stage, but a guide by the side. And I think that's what AI does to you. You always will be the guide by the side. You will always hold the child's hand. You will always help the child make correct judgment. You will always support the child when the child is going through an emotional, social, dilemma, difficulty. You have to be there. The teacher is irreplaceable. But AI will be a teaching tool in the hand of the teacher to just help make the teaching better, make it differentiated for different learners, make it more interesting, allow children to think differently and take back differently from the same classroom. So I think that is what AI will do. I don't see teaching a classroom without a teacher ever.
So, ma'am, I'd also like you to add on this. Do we need national guidelines on AI use in schools? Because to my understanding and what I was looking up, there aren't.
So I think around 2017, Niti Aayog gave out the national strategy for AI. But it was a broader policy document which talks more about the ethical issues and how AI is functioning and how in a broader policy perspective it should function. But I think in today's time when it has become, and I agree with Kamal sir that it's actually highly engaging platform. I agree with you, sir, but it's a boon for us. More than a bane, it is a boon. So somewhere a policy document is required for how it has to work around the school systems, the education system, more focused on the impressionable mind, especially at the school level. So I believe that is very much required, that there is a dialogue around it, and that should happen very quickly because it's here to stay. It's going to stay, we better embrace it.
I think I agree. There's a need for policies at different levels, especially at the school education.
All right, so we are about 2 minutes left in our session, and I want to have closing remarks from all of you on 2 points primarily. Is AI a risk or revolution? And what will the Indian classroom of 2030 realistically look like?
A revolution, of course, because the classroom's going to change. It won't look the same. A risk if it's not, if it's used irresponsibly. And the 2030 classroom will be a very nice, I think, a sharing of learning, where teachers and students will share learning. You just said sometimes that children come and say that my teacher doesn't know AI as well as I do. Absolutely, it's given. I mean, they are this generation who will know, these AI tools much better than we do. And so it's fine for me as a teacher to reach out and say, can you help me with this? I really don't know it. So it's fine. It's going to be an exciting place because knowledge will be really shared.
So teachers, no more as just information givers, now as mentors, as
Absolutely.
we've been discussing.
So I would say that AI is a revolution with a lot of risk, which are easily avoidable. So provided we have a purpose, we have an intention, and we have the right way of upskilling our teachers. So I think in 2030, what I see a classroom is like it has a highly upskilled teachers because that is the need of the hour. And with these upskilled teachers, I'm sure the pedagogy is going to change in the classroom, not just with the AI, but also with the physical formats of the classroom and the way the teaching learning strategies are going to emerge, because teachers will become the learning designers now, not just for information delivery.
So yes, AI is a real potential, a real possibility, but only if we manage the risks and make sure that the role of a teacher is maintained. Role of a teacher as a mentor, as a facilitator, as caring for the well-being of the learner is intact. When Sir were presenting, giving the demo about talking to an AI bot in Hindi, talking about Ohm's law, I think it was magical. You wanted to stand up and clap. But we'll have to be able to manage the risks. So yes, it is a potential. Now, I'll just flip the second question and say how should not a 2030 classroom look like? And I'll refer to one of the English stories that we had in our curriculum, Fun They Had by Isaac Asimov, where he talks about a fictional classroom of tomorrow where a robotic teacher is teaching geography and science, and there are problems in the geography sector, so a local inspector comes to fix it up. So definitely not that classroom. I get scared when I look at that. Thank you.
I think it's going to be more difficult for the parents than the students. Thank you so much for joining us in this session.